Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we're studying Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, entitled Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness, text 21. We can start with the Sanskrit words responsively. Karya,
Karya,
Karana,
Karina,
Kartritve,
Kartrive,
Hetu,
Hetu,
Prakritir,
Prakritir,
Uchyate,
Uchyate,
Purusha,
Purusha,
Sukha,
Sukha,
Dukhanam,
Dukhanam,
Bhoktritve,
Bhoktrive,
Hetur,
Netur,
Uchyate,
Uchyate,
Karya Karana Kartritve,
Karna, Kartrive,
Hetu Prakritir Uchyate,
Hetu, Prakritir, Uchyate,
Purusha Sukhadukanam,
Purusha, Sukhadukanam,
Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate,
Bhoktrive, Hetur, Uchyate,
Karya Karana Kartritve,
Karna, Karna, Kartrite,
Hetu Prakritir Uchyate,
Hetu, Prakritir, Uchyate,
Purusha Sukhadukanam,
Purusha, Sukhadukanam,
Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate,
Bhoktrive, Hetur, Uchyate,
Karya Karana Kartritve,
Karya, Karna, Kartrite,
Hetu Prakritir Uchyate,
Hetu, Prakritir, Uchyate,
Purusha Sukhadukanam,
Purusha, Sukhadukanam,
Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate,
Bhoktrive, Hetur, Uchyate,
Karya Karana Kartritve,
Hetu Prakritir Uchyate,
Hetur Prakritir Uchyate,
Purusha Sukhadukanam,
Purusha Sukhadukanam,
Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate,
Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate,
Karya, Karna, Kartrite,
Karya Karana Kartritve,
Hetu, Prakritir, Uchyate,
Hetu Prakritir Uchyate,
Purusha, Sukhadukanam,
Purusha Sukhadukanam,
Bhoktrite, Hetu, Uchyate,
Bhoktritve Hetur Uchyate. Would anyone else like to lead the chanting of the verse, either in person or online? Okay, so we'll study the word meanings, also responsibly. Karya,
Karya,
effect.
effect,
Karana,
Karana,
cause.
cause,
Kartritve,
Kartrive,
in the matter of creation.
in the matter of creation,
Hetu,
Hetu,
instrument.
instrument,
Prakriti,
property,
material nature.
material nature,
Uchyate,
Uchyate,
is said to be
is said to be
Purusha,
Purusha,
the living entity.
the living entity,
Sukha,
Sukha,
happiness.
happiness,
Dukhanam,
Dukhanam,
of distresses.
of distresses,
Bhoktritve,
Otrive,
in enjoyment.
in enjoyment,
Hetu,
Hetu,
instrument.
instrument,
Uchyate,
Uchyate,
is said to be.
is said to be.
Translation for those who arrived in the past few minutes. Hello, Bhakti Oasis, Danielle, George, and others. This is chapter 13, text 21, Bhagavad Gita. Translation: nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. So certainly a theme in our Safatov courses and programs is responsibility, a stance of 100% personal responsibility. This is one of a few texts in Bhagavad Gita that I regard as quintessential, as the foundation of the principle of personal responsibility. So we'll unpack that in the next half hour or so. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The different manifestations of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. There are 8,400,000 species of life, and these varieties are the creation of the material nature. They arise from the different sensual pleasures of the living entity who thus desires to live in this body or that. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. That's an interesting sentence. I'm going to read it again. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. So he enjoys distress. Okay. Sometimes Prabhupada will say the living entity on the machine of material energy suffers different varieties of happiness and distress. Okay. Okay, so let's just put that as a bookmark there, see where we go with it. His material happiness and distress are due to his body and not to himself as he is. So that's a distinction there. Material happiness and distress, indicating there's spiritual happiness and spiritual distress. In his original state, there is no doubt of enjoyment. Therefore, that is his real state. Because of the desire to lord it over material nature, he is in the material world. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing. The spiritual world is pure, but in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire victims who present different pleasures to the body. That sentence is so much fun, I'll read it again. The spiritual world is pure, but in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire victims who present different pleasures to the body. Ooh, that's heavy language. It might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. The senses are instruments for gratifying desire. Now, the sum total, body and instrument senses, are offered by material nature, and, as will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances, according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desires and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters. The being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. Once placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control of nature, because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. Suppose an entity is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into the body of a hog, then he is forced to eat stool and act like a hog. Similarly, if the living entity is put into the body of a demigod, he must act according to his body. This is the law of nature. But in all circumstances, the supersoul is with the individual soul. That is explained in the Vedas as follows: Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakaya. The Supreme Lord is so kind upon the living entity that he always accompanies the individual soul, and in all circumstances is present as the supersoul or Paramatma. Okay. I'm going to recite a few mantras to continue to invoke auspiciousness in our gathering. And my spirit in invoking these mantras is that whatever I may speak is aligned with the spirit, substance, and content of Bhagavad Gita, that I'm not in any way misleading, misinforming, misguiding, and that in my own way, according to my personality, I'm authentically representing the Bhagavad Gita. Om Angyanatimmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Upakadamayam Darati Svapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gavani Pacharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarini. Hare Krishna. We're studying Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 21. Karya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakritir Uchyate Purusha Sukadukanam Boktritve Hetu Uchyate. Translation. Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects, whereas a living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Just so we're all aware of who's here in the different platforms. Hare Krishna. Alright, so nature is said to be the cause of all activities and effects, whereas a living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. So the living entity, it's us, basic, Brett, you were in the foundational seminar recently. I think right at the beginning of the seminar, Hari Priya led everyone in a brief thought exercise, asking everyone to imagine that you're looking at a photo of yourself when you were 5 years old. And so if we look at a photo at 5, do we say, who is this stranger? No. We say, oh, that's David when I was 5. That's Sylvan, that's Brett, that's Emily. Okay. Now we know from basic science, it's basic chemistry. There's not one atom, not one molecule in the body now that was there at 5. Right? So everything in Bhagavad Gita, it's all the principles, it's completely scientific. It's not just, I believe. It's scientific. So the body is changing. There's a text earlier in Bhagavad Gita, Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir dirasthatranamuyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. So the body's changing completely, but there's some constant identity. You call Rosemary, I call David. So that indicates that identity, the I, it's completely non-physical. Completely non-physical. We can say, we commonly say, the body grew. It's actually not true. Is it that the atoms and molecules got bigger and bigger? I have bigger atoms now than at 5 years old. No, all the parts are changed. Still has some constant identity I call Dave. So that's what's referred to as the jiva, the living entity. So this is self-realization. Yeah. Okay. And so, all right. So then it gets into, all right, so how come this living entity called David Wolf is in this particular body, and the living entity called Sylvan Barrow is in that particular body, the living entity in the squirrel outside is in a particular body. Okay, so that relates to topics like karma. Karma means like according to what we do and desire. The consciousness, we do have the consciousness, the quality of being we cultivate will lead to certain activities, and that will lead to having a particular body. That's why, not just my belief, but consistent with this ancient, timeless, rational philosophy, ancient wisdom, yeah, that I'm the source even of the circumstances of my birth, who my parents were, and like that. Okay, and some of you may say, "Oh, that's woo-woo," or something like that, way out there. Well, so for me, it completely makes sense, and it's a point of view, it's a perspective that completely works for me. So, just like our consciousness, let's say someone's consciousness at 15, 17 years old, let's say, we can say they have a particular consciousness. This is a very studious person. They're getting straight A's and high scores on the SAT, and they're really into reading books. We know they're preparing. They're going to be in a body. They're going to be in an environment. They're going to be in university. Maybe get a PhD. Maybe someone else. We can say that in the teen years they're stealing cars and breaking into homes. Okay, they're developing a particular criminal consciousness. So we can say, oh, okay. It won't be surprising if in a few years they're in prison and they're wearing prison clothes, like that. So similarly, so the body changes, but the living entity goes on. So there's another change of body that we commonly call death. How does it make sense that the living entity would not go on? Would not go on. So I'm saying it's rational that it does, just like if X is not a function of Y, then it doesn't just magically become a function of Y at a certain point. The spirit soul exists. The spirit soul exists. The body changes, and then death is just another change of body, and so the spirit soul goes on according, and where we go. Yam yam vapi sman bhavam tyajatyante kalevram tam tam eveti konte asadata bhava bhavita. According to the consciousness we develop in this life, we'll enter into another body, just like the consciousness we develop in our teenage years kind of determines what our life looks like in our 20s. The consciousness we develop in our 20s determines what the 30s look like that. And so it's like that. And so it's described here, 8,400,000. But I think in modern biology, they've identified, I don't know, maybe they're up to about 5 million species, something like that. So Vedas are very precise, 8,400,000. So they're coming, modern science is coming to that number, approaching it. So, okay, so it could be like, yeah. Am I reasonably on track with that?
I have no idea, but that's an amazing prediction.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they're commentations for it. Yeah, so like there's so much knowledge in the ancient Vedas, and modern science is coming towards it. I could mention many fields where that's the case. And the ancient Vedas, they describe in this universal cosmic manifestation, there are 14 planetary systems, each with its time relativity. Bhaktivedanta Swami, he would often appreciate Albert Einstein. He said Albert Einstein had the right idea. But this idea of time relativity, like what might be 1 second here, or what might be 1 year here is a nanosecond on another planetary system. So it's all described in the ancient Vedas, which is very interesting because according to like modern or postmodern conceptions of what was happening in India, say 5,000 years ago, basically you had cavemen who could barely grunt. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Yeah, the ancient Ayurveda from thousands of years ago describes very intricate processes of doing brain surgery and things like that. It's a very, very advanced civilization. So, okay. So 8,400,000. So a way to see it is 8,400,000 types of prison cells. A very encouraging, optimistic viewpoint, but but that's it. So the nature of the spirit soul is free and shining brightly, more brilliant than 10,000 suns. And then for the spirit soul to be trapped in a material body, subject to janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, dukkha, dosha, anudarshana, birth, death, old age, disease. It's actually It's actually like a prison cell. So just like, okay, right. So all right. So let's say there's a criminal commits some crime, and then he's in a particular prison cell, and maybe it's maximum security, maybe it's like solitary confinement, maybe it's minimum security. Let's say he's in a particular prison cell, and now it's not that criminal. He was like, okay, my plan is to be in that prison cell. But it's just like, but the idea is like, okay, well, I violated the rights here, and I stole the money here, I murdered that person there, and so that criminal is responsible for being in a particular criminal cell. This is it's an effective analogy. Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects. So nature, in that analogy, that's like the government system and the prison system and the courts and the police. So like so it might be the police who drag that person into the prison cell, and the court and the judge, and then you got the warden, and okay, so like they're the one. That's the nature. they're the ones, you could say, who are the cause of taking the criminal into a particular cell. So the criminal said, "No fair, I'm here. You just dragged me here." And no, the criminal's 100% responsible for being there. 100% responsible. Right? He acted in such a way, or she acted in such a way, to be in a particular cell. Right? So and then in that particular cell, you get particular food, and you get particular association, and you get particular amount of time in the exercise yard. So the living entity, the criminal in the analogy, is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments. The food is terrible here, or like that. I remember this was back in the early 90s, I think 93, and then again in 95. There was a practitioner, Bhakti Yoga, follower Srila Prabhupada. His name was Chandrasekhar. I mean, I haven't seen him in 30 years, but a very, very fine fellow. And he was directing different Bhakti Yoga programs in prisons. Like giving Bhagavad Gitas to prisons. He would go there personally and do kirtan and Bhagavad Gita discussion in prisons. And so he invited me, and I went for some of them. And so the first time I went, it was 1993, and we were driving at a place called Eglin Air Force Base near what's that?
Near Fort Walton Beach.
Yeah, way Panhandle. Right. I'd never been to that part of Florida till that time. Right, so way I-10 West there. Right. So we got there, and I didn't know what to expect, and so we come in. We enter into the base, some security. And one thing I noticed, there was tennis courts, and there were people playing tennis. So I assumed it's like the generals and the administrators. And anyway, we go through more security, and we get into the prisoners. And anyhow, one thing I quickly found out, that the tennis players, it was not the administrators, it was the prisoners. And they had a beach volleyball court, and nowhere did I see any barbed wire or anything like that. So it turned out it was a minimum security prison for white collar crime. And so there at our program, they had bank managers who were there for embezzling money. They were proudly said, "Oh, later this week, joining us, there's going to be a state representative who took a bribe or something like that." So, yeah. So it was minimum security prison, and we had beautiful programs there, and so there was no barbed wire like that, and it was a nice place, nice place. But they were not free, because let's say one of them said, "Oh, I went to visit my children in Minnesota, no, you can't do that. Because if you walk across this line, if you violate the if you violate the ground rules, then you'll go into maximum security, and then you heavy barbed wire, and then you're with the murderers and the rapists and like that. So similarly, 8,400,000 types of cells, species, and some of them are relatively minimum security. Some of them are relatively maximum security, and everything in between. Relative minimum security means relatively sattvic, but then it's like velvet shackles, rather than iron shackles. And so the urging here, the urging here is to not make our aim of life to get into minimum security, to not make our aim of life to get velvet shackles rather than iron shackles. That, let's get out of prison altogether again. Let's continue with this prison analogy, which we use a lot, Prabhupada uses it. The whole material atmosphere is called Durga. Durga it's actually the name of a demigoddess named Kali, or Durga. And she has quite a fierce personality, and she's a pure servant of God. And she has the task of, she's like the warden of the prison house. It's described, Srishti Stiti Pralayasa Dana Shaktireka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Bibarti Durga Ichana Upamapi Yasya Tatesta Tesa Govinda Mari Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. That Durga manages the prison house of material existence on behalf of Krishna. She's serving Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so right, so like, let's say someone's in prison and goes, oh, I'm going to really help this person. Oh, they're in prison. I have some connection. I can get them some extra cigarettes. Wow, yeah, I'm a good friend. I can get them for Tuesday dinner, I can get them an extra helping of slop. Yeah. I get an extra 15 minutes in the exercise yard. So, the idea is like, well, maybe that's something, but now if we really want to help them to like really truly rehabilitate themselves, so they're freed from prison and they're truly free and they become contributing members of society, and then that's going to be their happiness, and to give up the criminal mentality, that's their real happiness. Okay, and so I'm not talking about to plan an escape from prison, but again, we're talking ideally here. Like, ideally, the purpose of prison and the warden and the guards, it's tough, it's punishment, all of that, but ideally the purpose isn't just sadistic punishment. Ideally, the purpose is rehabilitation, so that the prisoners become contributing members of society, and that's win-win. That's win-win. And they're happy, and they're not in anxiety. The police are going to get me, and like that, and they're like that. Okay, so that's what it means to really help. There's a Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Dvaite Bhaja Braja Gyana Sabo Manudar. Dvaite means duality. He said, like material conceptions, there's good and bad. The material conceptions of good and bad, he said, it's all a mistake. It's all a delusion. Because actually, it's all bad. It's not that there's not good and bad. No, there is. It's all bad. So what he's saying there is, okay, you could be in maximum security with like the harsh guards and in the barbed wire and solitary, or you can be in minimum security, you get to play tennis, but you're still in prison. It's all bad. It's all bad. And so it could sound so far like this is a pretty pessimistic philosophy. It's actually quite optimistic. actually quite optimistic. Our opportunity is to live for that which is absolutely good, true, and beautiful. So there's all good too, and that relates again. We're referring to the metaphor that relates to living our lives, to get out of the prison and resume our original blissful spiritual life. Okay, our spiritual life in self-realization and in service to the Supreme. And then that's what it means to get out of prison. That's what it means to get out of prison. In the recent 4-day foundation, I didn't do much facilitation, but I did a little. I seem to remember on the morning of day 4, I was mostly in the back of the room taking notes and making comments. But yes, and on the beginning of day 4, I shared an analogy that we got from Bhaktivedanta Swami. The analogy of the cat's jaws. The cat's jaws represent death, and death's. I see David Kaplan at the door. Nice. Hello, David Kaplan. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thanks for being here. We got an international group online. Everyone's here. Hare Krishna. So, yeah. So on the morning of day 4 of the foundation, the analogy of the cat's jaws represents death of the body, and I said that also on the morning of day 4. If we deconstruct it more minutely, we can say death of the body, but actually, the body's already dead and is always dead. I know. The more I go, the more big fun I am. Yeah, well, let's look at it. So, say the analogy of, let's say an alien from the galaxy Andromeda were to observe Earth, and they might conclude there are these living beings called Chevrolet and Mercedes and Toyota and Dodge and Renault, and like that. And then sometimes there's these other living entities called humans, and they're like parasites, and they have this parasitic mood towards the other living entities. But actually that would be illusory, because the Chrysler and the Volkswagen, they're not living entities. The car is always dead. Right? It's made of rubber or metal. It's made of dead stuff. It's always dead. This is the car. It's true. This is the car, the body. Bones, blood, corpuscles, pus. So the car only appears alive when the driver's inside. So we're the irreducible quantum of consciousness. That's us. So the body appears alive when we're inside. When the soul dies, when the soul leaves the body, that's a change of body we call death. When the soul leaves the body, we want to bury the body, throw it into the ocean. It becomes food for fish, worm stool. Yeah, don't shoot the messenger. This is just as it is. Okay. So, So to the extent as spiritual beings having human experience that we live, that we use this body, we use this lifetime, going for those pleasures, that happiness, that satisfaction, that at any time will be crushed by time, will be devoured by the snake of time, will be annihilated by time, will come to an end, whether in 8 seconds or 800 trillion years. It's described the lifetime of the universe as 311 trillion 40 billion years. That's Veda cosmology. 311 trillion 40 billion years. Even 311 trillion 40 billion years. It's not even an eye blink compared to the eternal life of the soul. So we're only going to Yehi sam sparsha jumbo goduku and evite jantifantakote nante shurumate Buddha. We're only going to be, because we're eternal beings, we're only going to be satisfied with that happiness that's ever increasing and never fading. And so then we're like a mouse or a rat. What's the experience of a mouse or a rat in the jaws of a cat? Terrible, nightmare, horrific, fear, terror. What's the experience of a kitten in the jaws of the cat? Sheltering, loving, protected, warm, loving. Yeah. Same jaws. So to the extent that we use our life for self-realizing who we are as not the car, as the driver of the car, not the body, as that atomic unit of sentience that inhabits the body, and to engage in loving devotional service to the Supreme, to our source, to the Supreme Person, then death, old age, disease, then the jaws of the cat. It's very loving. And even the disturbance, the inevitable disturbances of life, which are there constantly, the inevitable disturbances of life, they just become impetus to deepen my enthusiasm to engage in that happiness, bhakti, devotional service that'll never be devastated by time. So, kitten experience, rat experience. Okay. So to the extent that we use this body, anasaktasya vishayanyata mupiyunjatanya bandha Krishna sambandha yuktam vairagam uchite. So this philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, it is not world rejecting. I'll be spiritual. In fact, the whole context of Bhagavad Gita, it's a personality, a historical personality named Arjuna. And he thought, he's about to fight a big battle. He's like the alpha warrior of the age. But he thought, he'll go to the forest and be peaceful and spiritual. But his service to protect innocent people was to fight fiercely. So not that our service necessarily is to like be shooting arrows at people and things. But it could be. I'm not saying no, but we each get to consider what's my participation, what's my fight, what's my battle, and where might I have tendencies to shirk from it in the name of, it becomes like a spiritual bypass, pseudo-spirituality. So everything is God's energy. Krishna is a name for God. So whether it's money or relationships or our mind or this body, it's meant to be used in the service of God. It's meant to be used, and that's how we spiritualize the world. That's how we spiritualize the world. And so to the extent that with enthusiasm, which Srila Prabhupada defines as endeavor executed with intelligence, to the extent that with enthusiasm we use this lifetime for that happiness and security and satisfaction that has no cessation, then that's absolutely good. To the extent that we don't, if our activities are not fully aligned with the pure, loving, devotional nature of the soul, if they're sattvic, then it's kind of like the minimum security prison. If they're rajasic and tamasic, then it's like more the maximum security prison. But the Bhagavad Gita isn't carried in us like the minimum security prison. Yeah, there is like relatively more happiness there than the maximum security. come on, free yourself completely from the prison, and that's the process of bhakti. And we want to cultivate sattvic qualities as a platform for that. And yeah, and so so this process. So this is a process of bhakti. It's described in the Hebrew Karma Nashusti Pratyavayana Vijite Swapamapyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Baya. That it's not an all or nothing process. It's not like 100% or zero. At the same time, for our own bliss, it's encouraged, give yourself fully. But Krishna emphasizes, even if in this lifetime or today we do 1%, that's for our eternal benefit. That's absolutely good, absolutely good. And then otherwise, the duality of the material world, good and bad, to the extent that we're not responding to it in a way that deepens our enthusiasm for that which is absolutely good, true, and beautiful, then it's like absolutely bad. And so the process, there are some earlier in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna uses the term regulated principles of freedom. We quoted also in the recent Safatov seminar during those relatively few moments when I was in front of the group, Paul Seho, freedom is a capacity to commit to our highest good. And and that's true in any, let's say if we want to get really good at a sport, tennis or golf or basketball, means we'll regulate, I'm going to practice 10 hours a day. Same with a musical instrument. If we want to get a PhD in physics, means we're going to follow regular, we're going to do these homework problems, study for this exam. And so similarly, with if we really want to progress in spiritual consciousness, that'll require discipline, commitment for the highest good, for eternal good. And so a cornerstone practice of this bhakti yoga, as we did earlier in the program, is mantra chanting. There are many mantras. Earlier this morning we chanted Nrsingadev mantras, and we chanted Samsara Dava Nalalita Loka Trinaya Karunyaganaganatvam Bhaktasya Kalyana Gunarnavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda. And again, the core mantra, it's up there. Let's see, it's described in an ancient set of literatures called the Upanishads. Iti Shoda Shakam Nam Nam Kalikama Shanashanam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That this mantra, for various reasons, this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, is particularly recommended for self-realization and developing love of God in this age. And so, so chanting this Hare Krishna mantra, this is helpful on the path of bhakti, and to follow different regulative principles to be supportive. For example, like to develop the fine inner consciousness to apprehend the subtle distinctions required for spiritual progress. It's helpful to have a reasonably sattvic diet. And so, if we're eating the results, if we're acting in very uncompassionate ways, eating the results of animals being in agony and torture, that sort of diet, it's not going to help for that peaceful inner environment that's conducive for spiritual life. Similarly, just like earlier, we did the distinction about the car, the driver of the car, the body, the owner of the body. So, we're already under a lot of delusion. The core illusion is that I am this body. It's described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Vayam Dvitiya Vinivejitasya. To the extent that I misidentify the eternal self with the temporary body, I will be in anxiety. So like, for example, it's recommended if we want to progress in this path to come out of illusion and realize who we are as spirit souls and not the body, to commit to the eternal, to refrain from intoxication and things like that. Because like, I'm already in layers of illusion. So let me smoke this and take that, add more layers of illusion. That's probably not going to help. It's probably not going to help. It's not about like a thou shalt not, like you're good if you. It's just like if we want to develop a particular consciousness, there are certain things that are really helpful, like rising early and chanting mantra and discussing spiritual philosophy. Yeah. So it's described in Bhagavad Gita. Nasato vijate bhavo na bhavo vijate sata ubayara vidrishton tas tvanios tattvadarshi. Seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent there is no endurance, and of the existent there is no cessation. It's Bhagavad Gita ontology. So, yeah. So, again, we're the existent. The spirit soul, we exist. We're solid. The body, in a sense, it's non-existent. What do you mean it's non-existent? It's right here is the body. But if we deconstruct, again, the Bhagavad Gita, it gets into like, it's foreshadowing quantum physics and like that. And like ultimately everything becomes an energy wave. Not that I'm an expert in quantum physics, but basic stuff. So we say, oh no, this body, that chair exists. What do you mean it doesn't exist? But actually, if we deconstruct it, it's different atoms. Deconstruct that, subatomic particles, the electrons, deconstruct that, and then it gets into, now what are they, quarks and gluons and things like that. And it's always in flux. And even, well, this object is a solid thing. Now, we don't have the same body that we had when we walked through the door at the beginning of this program, right? But whereas the spirit soul, that's actually solid. You know, spirit, that's something airy, fairy. Well, no, the spirit soul, that's actually solid. And everything material is in flux. And by the influence of illusion, we think this is solid. So this gets into the very core of our identity. And this bhakti yoga, we get to realize who we are, spirit soul. And that's important, practically, psychologically, because the nature of the self, in the seminar we used the diamond analogy, the nature of the self is joyful, blissful, powerful. So realizing the nature of the self, engage in its original activity of devotional service, bhakti, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that makes all the difference. And to the extent that we're alienated from ourselves, and misidentified, because this is dead matter. Like, there's just not going to be a lot of joy there. That's an understatement. There's no joy there. At most, there's some relative relief of misery. Oh, I was in maximum security prison and the guards were beating me. Now I'm in minimum security and I can breathe. I get to go to the exercise yard, but that's not the positive happiness of a true free soul. So we're studying Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, entitled Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness, text 21. Karya karana kartritve hetu prakritir uchyate purusha sugadukanam bhoktritve hetur uchyate. Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Thank you for listening to Bhagavad Gita. At this time, I welcome if anyone would like to ask any questions or share any comments, realizations, insights, doubts, questions, or comments at this time. Hare Krishna.
I'll ask the question.
Yeah.
So you sort of explained it, but I think it would be beneficial to go more practical.
Yeah.
What's the difference between playing tennis in a minimal in the minimal security prison and singing kirtan like we did this morning. What's the difference? I mean, there was some fun being had, singing and dancing, and there's some fun being had hitting the ball with the racket. So what's the fundamental difference?
Thank you, Sylvan. Thank you. I appreciate your question. And I see Yurka or Arjuna has a hand up. Okay. Thanks for your question. Okay, well, in one sense, the playing tennis in the prison, that's the metaphor. And then the kirtan, okay, then we're like out of the metaphor. So, yes, one thing, so playing tennis in prison, you're right, so then it is more fun. So to the extent that we're sattvic in our habits, we're going to be happier and more peaceful than if we're rajasic and tamas. And so like those in minimum security, they are happier and they have more fun than those in maximum security. So that's true. So that's true. At the same time, those in the minimum security who get to play tennis and beach volleyball, and they don't have barbed wire fences. Yeah, but they have more freedom than those in maximum security, but they're not completely free. Again, if they want to, like, I want to take a vacation in Hawaii with my family. No, can't do that. If you step over the line, then you'll be in maximum security. So sattva is the more free mode. It is. So that's there, but it's not completely free. It's not completely free. And so then, okay, so then here, to the extent that we're engaged in devotional service, like kirtan for Krishna, and Krishna's pure devotee, and we're engaged in activities, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, then the spirit soul is out of prison altogether. Then the spirit soul is not bound by the pulling and pushing of the modes of material nature. Then the spirit soul is doing what it's naturally doing in eternity. That's the character and activity of the spirit soul in eternity, to engage in kirtan. Krishna says in chapter 9, he talks about kirtan. Satyatam kirtayanto mam yatantas chadvitavrata namasyantas chamam bhaktya nityayukto pasade. He says it's natural for the spirit soul to engage in kirtan 24 hours a day. So just like, take it back to the analogy. For the citizen of the state, it's natural to just follow the laws of the state, and then you're free to develop your business and have your pastimes, your sports, and hike in the mountains on the weekend, and to be with your family and to contribute to society and to develop this project and that project. And that's all on the foundation of following the laws of the state, like that. So there's engaging in the activities of bhakti, hearing and chanting the names of God. Then that's the natural, original consciousness and activity of the spirit soul. And engaging that, then we're free from the prison and the guards and the police altogether. Thank you, Sylvan.
Thank you.
Arjuna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, dear Dhira, Govinda Prabhu. Thank you for your lecture, and I would like to ask that Srila Prabhupada often uses like different terms for devotional service. Like he sometimes uses transcendental loving devotional service,
Yes.
transcendental service, like these different terms. So if you could maybe explain like if there is like some, I would say, difference in these terms that I remember that in Nectar of Devotion there is little bit explained like some differences, but I don't remember exactly. So if you can
Okay,
say something about it.
thank you, and just for everyone's context, Arjun is here from Czechia, somewhere near Prague or Liznice or something like that. And so, Arjun, I'd like to understand your question more clearly. So, you said different types of devotional service or different attempts at devotional service?
Yeah, different terms like
Terms.
names. Yeah,
Different
names
terms.
of devotional service like that. Prabhupada uses like transcendental loving devotional service, or sometimes just devotional service. So if there is like some difference, I don't know if you follow my question.
Okay, well, I mean, that points to an interesting study of how Prabhupada uses language, and sometimes he'll use different language synonymously, sometimes he'll use language in different ways to make different distinctions. So, actual devotional service, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Saji Kalpanoi Shravanadi Shuddhite Kare Udai. Love of Krishna, love of God is eternally situated in the hearts of all living entities. It's not something artificial to be gotten from some external source. And it's awakened by the process of devotional service, especially hearing and chanting, kirtan, like that. And so, yeah, so, so devotional service is always fully transcendental, means transcendental to the modes of material nature, transcendental to the prison house. Okay, those who are engaged in pure devotional service, they might sometimes visit the prison house. Let's continue that analogy. So let's say the warden of the prison, or the governor of the state, or the president. They might visit the prison house, and an ignorant observer might think, oh, just see, there's the governor of the state. He's in prison just like the prisoners. Maybe even the governor will visit the cafeteria and eat the cafeteria food. But that's ignorant to think like that. Because the difference is, the governor is transcendental in the metaphor. The governor is the governor can come and go as he please. He's there on a mercy mission to give some support and encouraging words to the prisoners. So an outside observer said, the governor's there and the exercise yard, so's the murderer. Same thing. No, the governor can come and go as he pleases. So that's it. So even a pure devotee might visit the material world. Someone like Jesus might visit the material world, but he's not a prisoner. He's here like on behalf of the king, so to speak. So devotional service is always transcendental. At the same time, sometimes we'll hear terms like devotional service in tamas. Tamas means inertia or ignorance. Sometimes we'll hear terms like devotional service in rajas, or mode of passion. Devotional service in sattva, or the mode of enlightenment. And then there's fully transcendental devotional service. So devotional service is always free from any tinge of material nature. But like let's say if let's say if I'm leading kirtan, that's devotional service, and let's say my leading kirtan or giving class, and a lot of my motivation is, then those who are hearing, or those who hear the recording, they'll think I'm really smart, or they'll think I'm a good musician, or they'll think, then people will say, oh, I was so inspired by your class, and but I'll humbly say, oh, thank you, or something like that. Okay, you get the idea. All right. So my motivations are rajasic and tamasic. The service, the names, the Bhagavad Gita, that's always transcendental. But it's an interesting discussion. But sometimes we'll hear devotional service in Rajas or in Tamas. Let's say I'm getting I'm preparing the altar, preparing the flowers. I'm like, why do I need to prepare the flowers today? She should have done. It's not even my turn. I always have to do her stuff. So it's devotional service, but I got all this resentment, grungy stuff going on. So it's in tamas, it's in rajas. And then devotional service in sattva, that's truly out of compassion and for self-realization and for purity. Then pure transcendental devotional service, that's truly out of love for Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. So I'm not sure if I responded to your question, Arjuna, but that's something that came to me.
Yeah, that sounds to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Arjuna. Thanks for being here. Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments? Brett.
I felt like I should make a comment.
Sure.
As I went through the 4-day course, one of the biggest questions I have is about taking 100% responsibility.
Yeah.
And I was rejecting that firmly.
Yeah.
And I had a online meeting with Jacob.
Oh, okay.
And then a discussion with another fellow classmate. And so I think David chose this topic today for me. But no, I don't believe that. I believe it was divinely inspired. And I've come to a much better understanding of the responsibility from what we've done in our past lives.
Yeah.
And also taking responsibility for what happened.
Yeah.
And then how do we go forward and not
Yeah.
letting that hold on to us.
Thanks for sharing, Brett. Yeah. It must be divinely inspired from that. I'll call it the trans-rational, trans-cognitive platform, because I didn't like deliberately say, this is for Brett. At the same time, yeah, but at the same time, there's some higher powers at work, and the technical name is the Paramatma. Like higher guidance within your heart and within my heart are coordinating things and using us as instruments, really. So this is special, and I'm glad to hear coming out of the course. Here you had your session with Jacob, and then this kind of clarifies and creates a refined understanding of that principle of 100% responsibility. Yes, that was, it's my karma. So, but we create our karma. This body is our karma, and it's no accident I got this particular body like that. So I'm glad this was helpful, and it really spoke to you in important ways. Thank you, Brett. Thank you. Anything else at this time? David Kaplan. Good to see you, Dave.
Thank you. I wanted to build on Brett's comment, and I'm hoping that I can recall what I was thinking. So yes, taking 100% responsibility, and I'm holding that up next to accepting reality. And I'm feeling like there's a relationship.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm interested in your thoughts. I can say a little more if you want me to about my thoughts.
Please.
Okay. So, what is it? I mean, reality is reality.
Yeah.
And my experience is my experience.
Yeah.
And I have a choice about how to be in a relationship to my experience.
Yes.
And so it seems to me that taking 100% responsibility is one choice.
It's one choice, yeah.
About how to be in relationship to my experience.
It's an option, yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like there's a reason. I feel like you might have more to say about why that's a good choice.
Okay.
I'm interested in that.
Thank you. Yes, okay. Thank you, David. I'm reminded here that in the second edition, Relationships That Work, the foreword is written by someone named Peter Burwash. Peter Burwash, he passed away a few years ago, but he was on the tennis tour in the 1970s. He a professional tennis player. He roomed with players like Arthur Ashe and things. I don't know if these names mean anything to anyone, but Rod Bjorn Borg, Rod Laver, things like that. Anyhow, and then after he retired from being a playing pro, he developed the most successful tennis teaching, tennis management company on the planet, which is something because like there were big names in tennis, big stars who also did, but so they had the names, but he was more successful. And he'd written many books on leadership and vegetarianism, different things. And so he describes in the foreword to the book that he describes himself, he was this very kind of self-absorbed, egocentric, egotistical young man. That's why he describes himself, he said. And then at one point in life, he had a business friend who cheated him out of a lot of money. And then he said he met a spiritual teacher in Mayapur, India, and I think it was 1976 or 1977. And the spiritual teacher is Bhaktivedanta Swami. He said, and the spiritual teacher told me the two most important things I ever heard, and it transformed his life. And Prabhupada told him, one, spiritual life begins when you understand the law of karma. Two, don't be angry at the instrument of your karma. So yeah, what you described, David, in one of our courses, we use the word context, human context, material context. You were in that course in 2014, I'm going to say. Yeah, 2014, I remember. And sweet exchanges between yourself and Felix Feldstein. Hare Krishna. So that's a context. So there's a acceptance. There's a distinction between accepting the context and resign to it. Oh well, that's what it is. What can I do? Acceptance. First of all, acceptance it's realizing I'm the source of this context. It's no accident I'm in this particular prison cell. It's no accident that this particular person is insulting me in this way. It's no accident that I've come down with the sniffles today. Right? I'm the source. I'm the source of this context. And we get that. And then that acceptance, then the context itself with its material happiness and distress in any sphere, like financially, we've all experienced some happiness and distress. Physically, we've happiness, distress. Interpersonally, we've experienced happiness, distress. In our residence, we've experienced happiness. Oh, but then the plumbing breaks or whatever. We've all, in every level of life, we've experienced happiness and distress each day, like that. So then that all just becomes an impetus. Accepting the context rather than resisting it. Resisting reality is always a losing battle, right? So accepting the context, including the inevitable difficulties, that becomes an impetus to deepen my enthusiasm to engage in self-realization and bhakti yoga, to get out of the prison altogether. And in that way, whatever the context, especially the disturbing parts, what a blessing. Now, if we go there prematurely, it becomes a spiritual bypass. Like something happens and it's unfortunate, it's a catastrophe. Oh, it's God's plan. Yeah, we can go there in a cheap way, without seeing like, okay, how did I create that? What were my mistakes? Where was I unconscious? I'm experiencing grief. I'm experiencing resentment, and not looking at any of that. And just go, it's God's plan, and then we're missing the lessons. But actual self-realization. Stavaraj and Gama Dekina Deki Taramurti Sarvaja Hayanija Ija Ishta Deva Sporti, that to actually realize the opportunity for self-realization and God consciousness in everything, in every event, in every atom. then the context becomes an impetus for my deeper and deeper joy in service to the Supreme.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Kristen writes, thank you for such an enlivening discussion. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Valerie, for your comment. Rosemary.
That heavy sentence you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
everyone is struggling hard to acquire victims who present different pleasures to the body. It reminds me of a different program where you describe the definition of lust as
No empathy.
no empathy.
Yeah.
And to the extent that we're operating in this world just from desire, we just acquire victims.
Yeah.
Hi, Krishna.
Thanks for that, Rosemary. Yeah, no lessons. Because I think, we can, probably like, this one victim, this one treated me badly, this one treated me badly. And that's part of the context to it. It requires humility to acknowledge we've been victimized. And also an important part of wisdom is to acknowledge, and I've victimized others for my agendas and gross or petty satisfactions or like that. That's part of the journey towards wisdom also. Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate the discussion. Any other questions or comments at this time? Anandini wrote, if we become weak in our commitment to live joyfully and in service, out of despair and doubts, how do we become strong again? If we fear the jaws of the cat, how can we transform the fear? Thank you, Anandini. Thanks for your comments. Well, as far as the the how questions, my responses in my endeavor to represent Prabhupada is to engage and connect again in the processes of bhakti in whatever way, and that relates to steadiness. Steadiness means like, well, right now, my mind and emotions and heart, there's no transformation happening. It's darkness, it's distress. Okay. Yam hina vyatyante te pusham pusha sharva. Samaduka sukham dhira somitatvaya kapite. Okay. Happiness, distress, and we continue steadily in kirtan, continue steadily in kirtan, and then that's the platform of liberation. Even like, I'm not feeling liberation, but whatever the modes of nature are doing to the body and mind and intellect, that me, the soul, I continue in kirtan. I can continue in kirtan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the happiness and distress, I don't want it to sound cliche, distress can sometimes be, it's too cold today. Distress can sometimes be like hellish torment. Matras Barshas Tukanteya Shitoshna Sukadukadaya Gamapaino Nichas Tams Titikshas Vivarata. Happiness, distress, like winter and summer season, to tolerate them. Tolerate means experience. It doesn't mean to ignore them. It means we experience them, and we continue. We continue with kirtan. We continue with kirtan, and and then we can notice our experience and see whether there's some transformation of the fear, like that, while experiencing the fear. I'm not sure if I responded to your question, Anandini. My focus, though, was to engage in Hare Krishna Kirtan. Thank you. Rosemary.
Thank,
Oh, wait. Anandini. Yes, okay.
thank you. Yes, it does respond in some ways. To continue to engage in kirtan, to be steady in the chanting, and I guess to pray for strength.
Pray for strength, pray to Prabhupada, pray to Balaram, pray for strength, yeah.
And support to continue the kirtan.
Yeah. Pray for strength and determination in the face of so many obstacles to continue steadily in kirtan. Prayer, yeah. Prayerfully.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anandini. Rosemary.
Hare Krishna. The talks today of service and about commitment are reminding me of something I saw on social media. Someone had posted about the prodigal son story in
Yeah.
the Bible.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was younger and I would hear that story, it would fill me with resentment and anger. I'm like, what do you mean? So there was a good son and he did all things. And then there was a son who, you know, he went off and was maybe not so good or whatever, but he came back with repentance, right? And he received the grace of his father. And then the other son was just resentful and angry. Like, what do you mean? I've been here the whole time doing as I should, and then this is what happened. So anyway, the posting was talking about how one of the worst places to be is in a spot where you don't think you need grace.
Mm.
And I never got that point when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I saw it and I was like, oof. So again, to what you were saying earlier, to the extent that we do service with the have to energy, and there's that resentment and that anger and the bitterness and all the things that happen. So for example, like why am I not blissful? Why isn't life better? I'm doing all the things. And I see that as being in the place where you don't think you need grace. Mm-hmm. And it's not a good place to be.
Thanks for your comment. For me, it naturally follows on what Anandini shared. Prayer. But yeah, I guess what I presented focused mostly on the work like everything depends on me. But it's work like everything depends on me and pray like everything depends on God. So I really appreciate at the closure here where our conversation's going. Because I didn't focus much on the pray like everything depends on God part. I focused more on the work like everything depends on us. So yeah, and the ultimate factor is the supreme. That's 18th chapter. Well, this 13th chapter, in my opinion, is probably the most philosophically complex chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And it talks about cause and like that. And 18th chapter goes into it also. 18th chapter describes 5 causes, 5 factors as the cause of all action. And one is our intention and the context and the senses and the quality of the activity and the field, different aspects of context. And the ultimate factor is super soul, the grace of the trans-phenomenal supreme person. So I thank you all for giving your hearing power and intelligence to Bhagavad Gita. I'll just close with, because I'm moved by the discussion, text 70, Krishna says, and I declare that he who studies this conversation worships me by his intelligence. So we're serving Bhagavad Gita through applying our intelligence. And so this is Bhagavad Gita. Certainly it discourages hard-hearted cynicism, also discourages blind faith or blind following. The whole treatise of Bhagavad Gita is moved by Arjuna's doubts. He wasn't cynical and like, you don't know anything, I forget this. But he wasn't pretending he understood something that didn't make sense to him. So he would ask, and then he'd get fuller and fuller realization. Bhagavad Gita ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna.